Welcome once again to the J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with ink, pen and ink. So have your kneaded eraser, a number 2 or an HB pencil handy, and any type of ink that you would like to use. But make sure that it's archival, that it's permanent, that it's black, and a smooth ink. And let's start doing some ink drawing. So ink drawing is a lot of fun, and all that fur, all that mane and everything, we're going to use some nice feathered lines, but a lot of him we're going to leave out, like in his body, some of the lighter areas, some of those light areas where the sun is hitting. So we're going to leave a lot of that out. Remember, when in doubt, leave it out. So the first thing we want to do is establish our composition. Where are we going to put everything? So our lion here, we want the edge of him to be right up against that side. Maybe give yourself a little bit more space than I've got here in the picture, because you can always go a little bit wider, add some more hair or something to it. If you think about our composition, the center of our page is about where his face is. So if you just kind of come through the center and you go, okay, somewhere up in there, this is where his head's going to go. So now you've established his head, and his back is about a third of the way down. So if you go about a third of the way down, you go, okay, here's his back side. Then you've got the rest of him in there. Leave about an inch or so over there. A little bit of space there for him. So you're closer to this edge than you are to this one. And hopefully down in here somewhere, we're going to have his paws. So now we have his whole body should be about right in here somewhere. There's his stomach. His legs are going to be down here somewhere. And this isn't perfect. All I'm doing is establishing I think where things should go. Because I need that point of reference. I've got to, first of all, get it where I think it should go, and then adjust it. Leg, another one that comes down this way. You can kind of see the backside, and then his tail. And remember, you're drawing with the side of your pencil. Our very important place here is his head. Most people are concerned with the head. So that's what we want to spend a little bit of time on, is that head. So I'm just going to do a little oval and say, okay, here's his mane. Up in here, his ear is about right in the middle of that head there. So I could just kind of throw a little circle there, a little half moon shape there, a little oval. There's his ear. Now this helps me to say, okay, his eyes then are between his ear and his back. So his eyes are about right in there somewhere. So I can come in and just off from the eye here, I can do a little circle and say, that's about where his eye is. I can adjust that. I can go up and down. In fact, I'm looking at it thinking, it should be over just a little bit. Remember to draw it first and then erase what's wrong. And you don't even have to erase what's wrong if you don't want to. His other eye is going to be over here, but you can only see just a wee bit of that other eye. Then his nose, if you come down here, his nose is beyond his back just a little bit. It's probably down in here, which means I might need to raise his back up just a little bit. This, by the way, is called proportioning. And as you draw, you should be aware of where everything is and how they relate to one another. His nose is his little triangle. You can just throw that little triangle in there. And it's more than just a triangle, but for now. Even his mouth is just this little triangle right there, and then it kind of curves up, and there's a little end over there somewhere. You don't have to connect them. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. Sometimes what you leave out is more interesting than what you draw in. When in doubt, leave it out. And I'm looking at my eyes thinking, oh, they're a little too high. I need to lower them a little bit. So I'm just going to lower them just a little bit. That's better. All that fuzzy hair, it's just going to be up in there somewhere. And a lot of that ear is lost. Not going to worry about that too much. His bottom chin is just this little U shape. And again, it's more to it than just that, but we're just trying to get our proportions in. If you go straight down from the outside of his eye, that's about where his jaw is. Somewhere about down in there. And you might have to move his eye over a little bit. You think, oh, that jaw's too long. Maybe it's not the jaw that's out. Maybe it's the eye that's out. So all those things kind of interact to create a good composition. And this is just a guide. If you come straight down off his ear, that's about where his front part of his mane goes. And again, I just giving myself guidelines here. Straight down off his eye is where his foot goes, so that's pretty close. So as we proportion, as we kind of figure things out where they go, just kind of look at your drawing, look at the scrap. And draw it as close as you can to right before you erase it. Remember, you need that point of reference. Now, what is most important is probably the head. And so as we draw this, there's a ton of stuff over here that we're going to leave out. So the head, the mane, those are the important parts. So as we draw along with our ink pen, just kind of try to pay attention to where those things are. There's a little guideline. I'm just going to use this little pencil to, there's the middle of his head, just to guide my pen just a little bit. So once you're happy with your composition here, once you're happy with your proportions, then it's time to use our ink. And where you start is totally up to you. You can start over here and work left to right. You can start wherever you want to. I personally like to start with the eyes, because the eyes, in my opinion, are the windows of the soul. They're the important thing, especially on a big cat. Your eye they're just so intriguing. So I know that if I can nail the eye, if I can get that just right, everything will fall into place. So that's what I want to do. I'm gonna start with the eye and work my way out. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoom into my picture. If you choose scrap and your scrap is on the computer, it's easy to do this. You can zoom into it. So that's why I like your Chromebooks. That's probably the only reason I like your Chromebooks, is so you can zoom into your pictures. You can get all those little details. Look at all those little shines in his eye. Not that we have to put those in, but I'm going to go ahead with my pen. I'm just going to start that dark ring around his eye. And instead of drawing a line, I'm just going to do these little zigzags, just back and forth. Because remember, we're just drawing shapes of darkness. So you can do little dots, you can do dashes, whatever you feel like you need to get that shape in. It's not completely round. It's kind of round at the bottom, maybe a little more oval at the bottom. Here's the little shape of that darkness that comes out of his eye. And then little dots and dashes. We can always come back into that and add more. And as that hair kind of comes out the side, little dots and dashes. The center of his eye, though, is very bright, and so you do this little C shape, leaving out that little spot of light, just like we did the human eye. And you can do little dots and dashes inside that eye, because it's not white. That eye is not white. So I'm just going to do little dots and dashes. All eyes are pretty much this way. And so when I ever look at eyes and I draw eyes, I just kind of know what I'm looking for. Those little shines, little dots and dashes. And now, as I go away from the eye, I'm gonna draw here, and I'm gonna just kind of fan out away from the eye. And anytime you do fur, think about the direction that the fur flows. There is this little center crease in the middle of the head. And if you think about that, all the fur on this side is going up this way. All the fur on this side is kind of going up this way. And it kind of fans out from the center and then moves out this way. So as you draw, just keep that in mind. And your hair will start, or your lines will start to look like hair. And you can just use dots and dashes. I'm also barely touching the surface with my pen. And just so you know, you're going to have to come back in and darken in some of these areas anyway. So, but when in doubt, leave it out. Okay, so if you think, well, it's dark enough, let it go. You can always come back in and darken it in later. So just little dots and dashes, and I'm barely touching the surface. And if there's an edge that you think, I can't see that edge, don't put it in. When in doubt, leave it out. So like right here where the eye goes, there's a lot of that stuff that kind of blends together, just to the little dark edges. Here's a little dark edge that goes around his eye and his cheek. So I'll do that. Here's a little bit down where his eye is. You can barely see that eye. Just leave that out. Here's his eyelashes. And that's all you need. I can always come back in later. Little dots and dashes if you need it, whatever you feel like you need. Like I say, we can always come back in later. When you're doing hair like it's coming out of his head, there's a ton of this stuff you want to leave out. But remember those feathered lines where you kind of drop your pen in and you just do a little flip. Flip, 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 flip. And you don't do too much, just a few. Even this hair that kind of comes down the side of his head, just do a couple. You can always come back in and add more if you need to. I'm just going to add these little hairs coming in and out. If I were to get rid of my graphite, all that sketchy pencil line that's there, all I'm left with is those little edges. And that looks very soft. And again, maybe that's all you need. We can always come back in if we need more. Wherever it's really light, just add some few little dots and dashes or these little feathered lines. You can even have some just hanging out up there, not attached to anything. And everybody gets the idea. They know what it is. Here's his little nose. I'm just going to do the dark parts of his nose. So there's one little spot right there, and then it kind of drops down, drops up. And rather than draw a line around it, I'm just dots and dashes trying to get the shape of that darkness in there. Like I say, you can always add more. His little jowls that are here are really soft and fuzzy. If you just add just a couple little dots and dashes, and just think about where it curves, that's about all you need. Rather than draw a line, just define those shapes. Here's a little triangle that represents his mouth. Then it gets really light, couple little dots and dashes. Here's his jowl here. There's also his whiskers that kind of come out there. You can define those if you want. His lower jaw is going to be defined by these little lines coming out, because what really defines that is his back. So I'll just come back in later on and define those. Just little dots and dashes to help define that edge. When in doubt, leave it out. So if you need less, just do less. Less is more. Now, there's all this value that's in here. You can use little dots if you want to. I'm going to use a combination of dots and dashes. So as I go through, I might do some little dots, little dashes, but just going to do a little combination to get all that gray that's in there. He's got some little scars on his face. Those little dark areas are scars. So my little dots might go a little closer together to just pick out some of those little scars. Those are just characteristics of his face. Just little lines, little dots and dashes. And you might need more or less. This is the important place. Everything else we can fudge through. We can just scribble. So spend some extra time to get this face about the way you want it. Little spots where the whiskers kind of come out. You can just do little dots and dashes and Then come back into it and add a little bit more to it as you feel like you need to. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but where his jowl was, I made it a little bit too small. If I had drawn a line around it, I'd be stuck with it. But here, I can just add a few lines in between, and I can adjust it. There's still a lot more I can do with that. I'm using line now to kind of define the dark edges. I'm thinking fur. So as that comes through, I'm going to look at that fur and say, okay, I got to go a little darker. As you get up into the mane, you can do a lot longer lines. And it gets a little sketchier, a little more spontaneous. Remember when you're doing your lines there, flip some up, flip some down. Don't go all in the same direction. Some are longer, some are shorter. When you get to that point, you think, okay, face is kind of starting to work out okay. Go ahead and just keep moving away from the head into wherever you feel like you need to go. I always have to come back into it and do more than I thought I needed to. Just is the way it is. Now, as I get away from the face, I can really do some sketchy kind of values. I'm just trying to get in the darks as best as I can. Some of them I can just scribble them right in. I can already tell that my proportions are a little bit off, which is okay. I left myself enough room, I can do that. If I'd drawn a line around everything, I couldn't do that. I'd be stuck. There's a ton that you can leave out. If there's an edge that you think, well, I don't need that edge in there, just leave it out. Your viewer can make that connection. the more I draw around the lion head, the more I think I need to go darker here and there. Not just everywhere, but here and there. Whenever you want to do a shadow, just pick out the shape of the shadow. And if you have to take your pencil and go in and just kind of define the shape of the shadow, go ahead and then just take your pen and just hatch through it. Don't draw a line around it. Just define the shape of your shadow. Here's his little feet. And because his feet are so light, there's a ton of that I'm going to leave out. Just throw in a couple little dashes and lines and dots, and you got it. Get rid of all my graphite. Now I can just finish it up. As much darkness as I need to go. Further you get away from your emphasis, the more sketchy you can be. Scribbly. So here, clear down to his feet, you can just scribble in those shapes of darkness. And everybody understands that those are just feet. There's no really tight details. But if you got the wrong spot for the eye or the mouth, then everybody knows it, and they'll tell you about it. Everybody's a critic. So now you're just scribbling with purpose. Trying to get the darks. The light's already there for you. Now, what's wrong with our lion? Yeah, he's floating. So the last thing to do is you just need a base there. Usually there's a shadow or something. You see all those little textures of the dirt? You can just scribble those in, and just a few, even just that much, is better than nothing. So you just need just a couple little dots and dashes, some little scribbles to just say, hey, he's on the ground. And if you wanted a little grass, you just do a couple little things of grass kind of poking out here and there. Just enough. You don't need much. I mean, that much is better than nothing. So just keep that in mind. You get kind of caught up in your subject matter, and you're having fun doing that, and sometimes you forget there's a little ground there or something. All right, added a little grass because he looked kind of desert-like, but just something, a little bit of something down there. Thanks for drawing with me. Hopefully you learned something, had a little bit of fun doing it. There is a ton more we can do, but this is all just kind of practice. You do what you can in the amount of time you're given. And make sure you sign it. That's an important part of your composition. Good place for that signature is, oh, maybe right here in front of his foot, right there. And I hope you have a lovely day, and that somehow art has made your life a little bit better, because art makes life better.